What is up, guys? So I'm certain that everybody has run into the problem of playing a match with Blackout. They're doing good, they've got good weapons, they got a good setup, they got 3 or 4 kills, and then BAM! They're denied the win by some guy on an ATV. Now this guy could be perhaps just going from point A to point B and happened to see you, and so he decided to splatter you all over the road. Or maybe he is horrible at gunplay, so he's just been sitting on an ATV in level 2 or 3 armor the entire match. Who knows? Either way, I think we can all agree that there's a bit of a problem with getting kills on an ATV in Blackout. Now, I have no problem with being able to get kills with an ATV. In fact, I think it can be an actual useful tactic. I think it can be a style of play, and I think it can be really fun. But it's just too easy to do and too hard to counter these ATV kills. Now, I don't want to be that guy that screams, "Nerf, nerf it all," because I don't necessarily think the ATV should be nerfed. It just needs changed. It needs balanced. You don't need to go and make it super slow or super immobile or make it so that it can't kill people. No, nothing like that. I just think there need to be certain changes implemented that would balance it better for Blackout. Again, I don't necessarily think that you have to nerf any specific aspect of the ATV. First, I want to go over some of the major problems that make getting kills with the ATV too easy, and some of the changes that could be implemented to correct some of those problems. First and foremost, I think the ATVs just do too much damage. Now, I know I said that the ATV doesn't necessarily need nerfed, and it doesn't. The problem isn't necessarily that it can get a one-hit kill, it's that no matter what, it's a one-hit kill. And this is the problem. So you don't necessarily need to make it so that it's a 2 or a 3-hit kill, but I think the best way to fix this without nerfing it would just simply be to prorate the damage for speed, so that the driver has to be going quite fast in order to get that one-hit kill. Meaning it's still possible to get the one-hit kill, but you can't just be traveling at 2 or 3 miles an hour, tap somebody's knee, and then die. That's a little bit absurd, and I think most people would agree with me on that. So that way, if somebody's going full throttle and they smack into somebody short, they're going to get that one-hit kill. However, if they are driving at somebody and that the person, their intended victim, dodges, and the ATV whips around and drives another 3 feet, like happens to me all the time, they're not going to get that one-hit kill. They're only going to do maybe 25, 50 damage or something like that. They're not going to get a full one-hit kill. The other thing that they could do is make armor mitigate damage done by an ATV. Now, I know this could arguably be absurdly unrealistic, but not necessarily. As far as realism, I think on a realistic level, having armor would mitigate the damage done by the impact of a vehicle to some extent. But even then, aside from realism, I think it would just benefit the gameplay more, create more balance. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Maybe have level 1 armor reduce damage from ATVs by 10%, and then 15% for level 2 and 20% for level 3. It doesn't have to be anything insane. And then maybe make this armor mitigation not applied to the ARAV or a helicopter if you get hit by one of those, or the truck. Maybe they're considered heavy enough that the armor wouldn't be useful. I just think that something needs to be done to help counter the ATV's damage. And again, I think prorating the damage for speed so that the amount of damage you do on an ATV is determined by how fast you're going. This would prevent you from getting your one-hit kills when you are traveling really slow. And having some armor help mitigate the damage done by an ATV would still help the person defeat and counter that ATV. By using these methods, you'd also still be able to get your one-hit kills, so you're not completely nerfing the ATV, you're just balancing it. The other issue is the ATV's field of view. So the ATV is extremely mobile. It is able to travel really quickly, whip around, and come back if it misses. And that's not necessarily the problem. I have no problem with the mobility. In fact, I don't think you should nerf the mobility, because again, I don't really want the ATV nerfed, just balanced. And changing its mobility would, in fact, nerf it. And I think the mobility on it is fine. I think the controls are fine, and I think it works. However, when you combine this greater mobility with the ATV rider's field of view, you get a problem. So Call of Duty is played in first person. However, when you get in a vehicle, it is played in third person. And that's not necessarily a problem with the ARAV or the truck. However, it becomes a problem with the ATV, because now this rider has not only increased speed and mobility, but also an increase in visibility, so they can see you very easily. So they can turn their camera, identify a target, and then use their speed and mobility to whip around and approach that target and take them out. And it makes it very difficult to counter for anybody who's on foot. I'm not saying they should be able to match the ATV's mobility, but they should be able to match their field of view. So to fix this, I think the best thing to do would be just to make whoever's driving ATV have to drive it in first person. So you would be able to keep the mobility, but they wouldn't have this unfair field of view advantage. The other thing that they could do to help with this is make the hitboxes on the person that the ATV is trying to collide with smaller. So you've got the hitboxes on a target for gunplay, and you can actually slightly miss your target and still get hits because the hitboxes are a little bit larger. Now, there's different opinions on this, whether that's good or bad, but that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is those hitboxes, those larger hitboxes applying to the ATV, and by that I mean they shouldn't. I don't think a character's hitboxes should be larger than the body when it comes to the ATV, because the ATV doesn't even technically have to hit the person now. I mean, it's already extremely easy to run over somebody given your advantage of mobility and speed. You don't really need an extra large target. I think the hitboxes should be the same size as the person so that the ATV can't clip the person quite as easily, and this would make it a little bit easier to dodge that incoming ATV, which is one of the large problems, is that because of its mobility and speed, it's extremely difficult to dodge. So by decreasing the hitboxes on the person when it comes to the ATV trying to hit them, I think would be extremely useful and allow for a little bit of counterplay because you can dodge that incoming ATV. Now, some other miscellaneous changes that they could implement to help with this issue are as follows. Maybe make each person the ATV hits slow the ATV slightly. And this really only works if you do the prorated damage for speed. So how much damage you do depends on how fast you're going. So this wouldn't really be useful in solo because you could still easily get your one-hit kill. In fact, you probably could even do it in duos. But if you go into squads, what this would help with is it would keep ATVs from running through an area and in one single pass taking out an entire squad. Because each person they hit would slow the ATV slightly to the point where maybe the second or even third person they're hitting, it's not doing near as much damage because it's been slowed down by hitting one of the other players. Again, not really useful for solo, maybe not even for duos, but I think that'd be helpful in squads. Another thing that the developers could do would make hitting a person do some damage to the ATV and or the rider. And I mean some, I don't mean a lot, I mean very little, but still some damage. I would say definitely to the ATV, maybe add some damage to the rider. The rider part, not necessary, but I think definitely to the ATV, because you're going to do damage like crashing through fences and whatnot. So I think it should be applied to hitting people. Again, not significant damage. I think it would reduce the amount of ATV play just that much more, because then one person can't get on an ATV and use it the entire match, running people over, because after a few people, he's going to have to change out ATVs because his ATV will be damaged. Another thing would be simply to make some way to disable the ATV temporarily, or just add some other counter in there. And that's the biggest problem with these ATVs, is they're extremely fast, they're extremely mobile, they have a crazy field of view, and there's not really any effective counters. And again, I don't think we should nerf the speed or mobility, but I think you should take away their field of view, and I think you should add some counters like EMPs. That could disable the vehicle, so you could, if you have an EMP, you toss it out, the vehicle is disabled, and maybe make it apply to trucks and or helicopters or ARAS, or maybe just make it for ATVs. I mean, I'm not real concerned with the other vehicles. I think they're pretty balanced. The ATV is what has the problem in my mind. So I'm aware that the concussions slow vehicles significantly, but they're not really an effective counter because they're too rare of a drop. Sure, the developers can make concussions spawn in more, but then while that might help balance the ATV problem, it's going to create a lot of problems in actual gunplay. So I don't think that's the answer. I think they need to add something in like EMPs, which maybe they affect players, but it just gets rid of their HUD. It doesn't do anything significant, but it would have a much larger impact on an ATV. Mesh mines spawn quite frequently, and they are fairly good against ATVs, but it still requires dodging. So without some other change to the ATV in some aspect, it's likely to get you killed, because you're not able to just use like the rocket launcher to take out the ATV from far away. And I'll get to the rocket launcher more in a minute. But with the mesh mines, you have to be fairly close because they don't exactly give you a really easy system of aiming. I mean, it gives you an arc and it shows you where it's going to land, but that's more useful for actually setting them up as mesh mines, not using them like some sort of grenade or anything. And even then, they don't always do enough damage to the ATVs. I feel like I've seen mesh mines strike an ATV directly and not always blow it up. So the thing is, you have to get quite close to the ATV, or rather, you have to let the ATV get quite close to you. So you're still at a good risk while you're shooting at this thing, because you have to be dodging and attacking, and the ATV driver's just kind of driving at you. So again, I don't think those are a real good counter. The grapple gun is absolutely great for staying out of the way of the ATV, but it's a soft counter at best, since it doesn't actually defeat the ATV. It just can pull you out of the way and then you turn and shoot, and so it's not really a counter, at least not a hard counter. It's a soft counter at best. Now onto the rocket launcher. Yes, this can take out the ATV, but it doesn't really work super effectively because it takes a while to lock on. They get a lock on notification, and the rocket launcher is really slow. And plus, the ATV is really fast, so it's not that hard for an ATV to get out of the way. You know, what they do is drive over the side of a hill or get behind a tree or a building, and that's actually really easy to do on an ATV. So it's quite rare that I ever kill somebody that's on an ATV when I'm using a rocket launcher. So I don't think the rocket launcher is a super effective counter. I think having an EMP or something that temporarily disables the ATV or some other counter would be a better option. And so I think all of these things can be implemented to some extent to help with this ATV problem. I think the biggest ones they need to focus on are prorating the damage for speed, so that you can't, miss your target, flip around and drive 3 or 4 feet and get your one-hit kill, because you're simply not going to be going fast enough. And you could also kind of work with that a little bit more by having armor mitigate the damage done by an ATV and reduce the field of view. Again, keep the mobility, keep the speed. I don't think that needs to go anywhere, but get rid of its field of view, make them first person, and then make the hitboxes on the people that the ATV has to hit, make those smaller, so that it would help with dodging a little bit. And then of course you could throw in some other things like maybe some more soft counters, some hard counters, things like that. Engineer is a soft counter at best, again, because it doesn't actually defeat the ATV, it just helps you see it coming, but you can kind of hear it anyway. So the majority of counters that come to ATVs right now seem to be focused around just avoiding the ATV, and I don't think that's right. I think there need to be some effective counters for defeating it, and right now there simply aren't. So again, your rocket launcher is probably one of your best counters against the ATV, but it can be difficult to hit them. It's slow, so I mean, by the time you get locked on, they might have run over you anyway. And by carrying a rocket launcher, you're actually at quite a large disadvantage to gunplay and other aspects of the game. So because of that, I would actually say mesh mines are your best counter, because carrying them doesn't really give you a massive disadvantage in other aspects of the game. However, I do feel that they're a little bit more difficult to defeat an ATV with. So just none of these counters that they have in game are, most of them are soft counters, just based around avoiding the ATV, and even the hard counters that are based around defeating the ATV are very minimal. Again, concussions spawn in very rarely, understandably, but it is a fact that they spawn in too rare to be an effective counter. Mesh mines can be a little bit difficult to use and puts you in a lot of danger, and the rocket launcher simply it puts you at a disadvantage when it comes to gunplay elsewhere, because rocket launchers suck against infantry. Now maybe maybe you can improve that counter. Maybe you make the rocket launcher a little bit more effective against enemy infantry, so that if you carry around a rocket launcher to defeat these ATVs, it's not such a problem, because you can still use it, to some amount of effect in normal gunplay. Also, maybe make the rocket launcher lock on faster to the ATV. So again, I think they need to add more counters, maybe improve some of the counters they have, and then make some balancing changes. Again, not really nerfs, but just balancing changes to the ATVs. Anyway, that's my opinion on the ATV problem in Blackout. Yeah, I probably went on for a little bit longer than I intended to, and these really annoy me. Again, I don't mind getting killed by somebody on ATV. I just have a problem when they really shouldn't have gotten the kill, because they were driving 3 feet and barely moving. But anyway, thank you for watching.